Hey guys, how you doing? Been a while. Portia Woodman-Wickliffe. I talk about her. It's been a while. I mean, the last time I spoke was February. So Portia Woodman and the things that stand out from her that are in relation to the sevens game and the 15s game is the transition of professional players in the modern world and the changes that I'm picking up. You know, the longevity of the game and what you're looking for. Rugby is definitely something from my generation that was the be-all and end-all. And I think now it's a situation of where you want to maybe re-identify yourself and know that rugby is there, but know that it's a part of a process for a longer period of your life. And hopefully I finish that in a minute. So, wash my caps. I've got these awesome hats from my father-in-law who passed away, and my mother-in-law, stepmother-in-law, one of my mother-in-laws, she was going to throw them away. So I was like, no, I want to take them because, I mean, a golf hat is a good golf hat, right? And yeah, talk about the game. So, my head's going to be down a lot this time, but I'm sure you'll understand the reasons why. Is the Portia Woodman-Wickliffe scenario, you know? And I still strongly believe that Portia is a generational player who has transitioned the game of rugby for the sevens and the 15s game so well. She retired, she went back to 15s, she found love for it again, signed up, and you know, I don't believe their squad has been announced yet, but you know, if in doubt, go and follow Ella Ferguson, go and follow Les Elder, go and follow mainstream commercial sides of New Zealand rugby. Like, those are always good. The breakdown from Sky Sports, the rugby pod is always good. But for me, Ella Ferguson, she brings out some good, quick content, sums it up nicely. I think Les Elder, great journalist, speaks about the game of women's rugby so well. Yeah, for me, Portia, just a grand example of the sevens and the 15s game, and you know what she's done for it. And you know, people will oh no, you know, she is a different game than the men's game. Yeah, well done. You know, it's very true. But you know what she's done for the women's game is just, you can't put that into words, bro. You cannot put that into words. And I think she is like one of the top 3 rugby players overall that has changed the game. I think in this generation of mine, there's just so many players who have come across who like really stood out. And you know, Dan Carter, Richie McCall, let's go through it. Australia, Matt Giddo, Drew Mitchell, Cooper, Stephen Moore, Wycliffe Palou, Will Guinea, George Gregan, Michael Lana, David Campese. I suppose is more Jonah's era, but you know, David stood out. Sure, through my childhood, can always just go through the names. Flanker for the Wallabies, George Smith, New Zealand, tons of them. You know what I mean? Christian Cullen was Jonah's era. Outside of that, I said Dan already, said Richie already. Let's speak into, you know, currently, Ma Nonu, still playing rugby, South Africa. What's this current? Brian Abana, Marie Dupree, Skulk Burger. In the front row, I mean, also was Jonah's era, but you know, still a good player. Currently, Francois Herbert. I mean, Sia Khaleesi, Dwayne Vermeulen of the past era. Look at, you know, people obviously think I'm being biased, and they'll be like, "Oh, you forgot this player, this player." I mean, yeah, I will forget a lot of players, but I mean, those are the ones just off the top of my head. But when it comes to the women's game, I just think Portia stands out more than anyone else. and what she did for the game of rugby, what she's still doing for the game of rugby, is just so good. I really believe that her showcase of the game of 7s and 15s is a classic example of why 7s rugby is so important, and the current trend that's going on at the moment of where 7s players and 7s organisations are cancelling the 7s programs. For me, coming from a 7s background, I just don't understand it. 7s was a game when you started young. It just gave you such a better foundation of understanding the game. You understood the game better. You appreciated the game better. You played the game way differently. I remember when I came from a 7s camp and I came home and I played a 15s game. It was a club rugby game. I had to travel for it. It was up in, from where I live, it's about a 45-minute drive. Okay, it's not that far, but, in South Africa, South Africa, 45 minutes is far. So, or back then, let me say that, not now. And I remember travelling up there and I played the game and I played at fullback. And I remember just the hall, and I was just like, why is no one looking after these spaces? Why is no one taking care of these holes in the wall? And I appreciated 7s even more just from that moment. And 7s was with me pretty much my whole professional career up until 2009. And that's when I finished my last 3 years at the Leopards. But 7s was with me all the way up into there, provincially and then nationally. And it's such a great game to learn skills. It's such a great game to learn your foundational skills, and it shouldn't be taken for granted. And to see the way that a lot of the unions are treating their 7s department was just really sad. And I really hope this Indian RPL really comes through and becomes popular, because at least it creates just another opportunity. Something very similar to cricket. Cricket was dying. RPL came into the fray, and now cricketers are earning life security in the span of 3 months if they're a quality player. And if they're not, then they have more opportunities to prove themselves to eventually earn enough money that they can retire at 34, 35 happily and have a good future. I think a player like AB de Villiers should still be playing cricket, but I think RPL gave him that opportunity to retire early. I think he was such a good player that he played from such a young age that it was time for him to call it a day, and he was ready to leave. So if the RPL of rugby can do that for the rugby boys, just super stoked for them, and I hope it works out. But coming back to the main point, which was Portia, she was a classic showcase of why 7s is so good, and why it should still be part of every single organisation's development protocol. And some players will stay there, some legends will stay there. I mean, Hall of Famers played 7s their whole careers. DJ Forbes. DJ Forbes was in the New Zealand setup for Yonks, Frankie Horn, Cecil Africa, Fabian Juries in my era, Stefan Besson, Philip Berger. There was slight transitions into Super Rugby, but a lot of them just stayed within the game of 7s, and they built a career off of it. Back in the day now, we didn't have the opportunities that the teams have now, so a lot of those guys are still in the game coaching. John D. Lestick is the assistant coach of the current Springboks, and it's the prime example. So 7 skills does extend beyond just the playing field. But that was just my point of keeping that game within the phrase of all organisations. My second subject was the NFL stuff, and NFL players are like international players, but all of them are. Where an international player can come into a fray of a setup and perform to the best of his ability because he knows what's needed of him. And I think at the moment rugby players who are professional don't understand how to transition. We don't know how to go from one union to another union, buy into the culture, buy into the setup, and perform. And I think that's a lot of the difficulty that a lot of teams are facing. I think the Bulls at the moment in South African rugby is a prime example of that. They don't know who they need. They're looking for players. But then I say to you this, is that if a player doesn't understand his role as a professional in this modern day world where he will get shipped to Japan for a season, come back, pull a Sean Stevenson and play for the Chiefs and play really well, that's the understanding of being a professional player. Because number one, you buy into the culture. Ardie Savea went to Mono Pacifica to prove a point. Prove the point. Now goes to the Kolbe Steelers and is coming back to Moana after his sabbatical, which he signed with New Zealand Rugby. That's a player who understands his colleague. Cheslin Kolbe, Curtly Orange. Yes, and I know I'm speaking very Southern Hemisphere focused. I watched the Gallagher Premiership final, and it was really good rugby from Bath. I think Bath played a great product. But who was in there? Thomas du Toit. Another example. Professional player, buys into the culture. The coach even, Johan van Grant. JP Nel. I mean, I started with JP Nel when we were at the Falca in 2006. JP's come a long way, but he's bought into a culture with his boss, and they've built something so well that they lifted a trophy this weekend. And some of them are still partying, which is fantastic. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Is that I think at the end of the day, it's now being a little more ruthless with regards to professional rugby. Is that if a player cannot connect, he goes on the free agency list where he gets moved to the B squad, and then his time is up. If he signed a longer contract, okay, well done, but you're not going to get any game time because you're not performing. And I think that's something that rugby players and rugby spectators need to understand. And then my final thing is just the longevity of rugby. And I think our era needs to teach the new era that it's not a forever thing, and rugby will finish. But the networking in rugby is a forever thing. So if you can find the right longevity and find the right connections in your networking, I think a lot of players have fallen into that very well. From personal experience, the John Smiths of this world fallen into property. Butch James also fell into property. This is from guys that I know who, kind of I look up to and, copy and paste as much as I can. It didn't work for me necessarily because I wasn't earning a top tier contract, so that was the difficulty of it. But, players like that and, JP Peterson, he's a coach now, but, he's doing the coaching job as a passion. His wife is thriving in her business. And I'm sure he's gone into the investment game, so he networked in that sphere. There's a handful of players that are in the financial game. There's a handful of players that are, in the entrepreneurship game, and you need those mentors to guide you through that. But do it from the get-go. Don't wait. You're in varsity cup. You're playing schoolboy rugby. You're playing rugby for the love of the game. Start networking. Find your people who can help you build a career that you can retire and be like, I met him through rugby. Locally here, there's a guy who's sponsored the rugby club locally, but he's invested, and all of his staff are all ex-rugby players who he met through his career. So I think rugby provides that opportunity. You just don't take it for granted and use it to the best of your ability. And those are my 3 points, man. Look, it's been a while. February was the last time I posted something. This is a rough cut while I clean my hats and sit on the Portia in this blazing heat and just have a quick chat with you. Enjoy the rugby that's coming up. We've got semi-finals coming up for Super Rugby. We have top 14 quality rugby coming. Gallagher Premiership is done and dusted. We have the Lions' first game against Argentina happening this weekend. So lots of rugby to still follow, and probably more intense because it's international level, but just enjoy it. And I hope some of those points and those notes maybe make you consider as a spectator, or if you are a player at the moment, to consider. And throw some questions. Let's keep talking. It's open. Thanks for listening, guys. Cheers.